Good morning, ChurchOne. Happy Easter. He is risen. He is risen indeed. Every Easter, I think about this. I've even probably shared it before with you, but I think of Easter egg hunts and just remember as a child, what a terrible Easter egg hunter I was. And I think the real problem wasn't speed for me. I look, but it was like how I looked in my low expectations. You see a little nugget into my life. I'm 18 months younger than my older brother. And so probably spent a lot of my early years just following him around. And when it came to Easter egg hunts, that's what I did too. And I would follow him around and I'd look exactly where he looked. And so, if he had just looked and found an egg and I looked the egg wasn't there anymore. And I started to develop like very low expectations around Easter egg hunts as a kid. Um, it makes me think, Mary, this in the passage in the lectionary in John chapter 20, where Mary Magdalene comes to the tomb looking for Jesus. It looks like Mary came to the tomb with low expectations as well. Jesus has died, he's been buried. She's coming to check the tomb out, and she discovers that he's missing. And even when she sees the empty tomb, she assumes the body's been stolen. Not a bad assumption, but that's what her assumption was. And she looks right at Jesus, and she thinks he's a gardener. She doesn't even think she's Jesus. And I guess a question to kind of get us going this Easter morning is, what are your expectations this Easter Sunday? Maybe you're like me, kind of going through the motions of life, and you come to Easter, and yeah, Jesus is risen from the dead, but what does that really mean for you? And or maybe you're like Mary, and you've been wounded by disappointments and hurts of life, and even disappointments in God and what God seems to be doing. And so you really come to Easter Sunday with very low expectations. It's interesting that Mary is the first recorded witness of the resurrection, but she's not meant to be the last. She is the beginning of a new era in God's plan. God has always been able to make something out of nothing. God in the Garden of Eden created life. We created the Garden of Eden out of nothing, ex nihilo, they say. And life was a part of that creation, but so was freedom. And we humans use that freedom to reject God, which brought death into this world of life that God had created. And now, on this first Easter Sunday, God once again is doing what seems to be so mysterious and impossible to us, to bring life out of death in the resurrection of Jesus. It's interesting to me, Tyler Stanton, a pastor, said this to say, "It was in the garden where a woman named Eve was deceived by Satan and brought the fall of man. And it is in another garden where the resurrected Jesus reveals himself first to a woman named Mary as the victor of sin over death." We may come to Easter indifferent or hopeless, but we don't have to stay that way. Mary did not. Mary had an encounter with the resurrected Jesus that changed her, and we can be changed this Easter, right now, in the same way. And I want us to look at that encounter and how it changed her, and it can change us. And there really are two aspects of Mary's encounter that I believe changed her that first Easter and can still change us some 2,000 years later. And the two aspects of that encounter are these: that it was personal and it was meaningful. First, it was personal. Um, it's interesting when you look at this passage. I'll take a look at it. It says in Matthew 20, verse 16, it says, Jesus said to her, Mary. Jesus said to her, Mary, right? Mary, as we read earlier, earlier in the passage, Mary is coming. She thinks the body's been stolen. She sees this person. She thinks she's a gardener. And Jesus says, Mary. He says these words. It's so interesting. We like to think that seeing is believing, right? If I could have only seen Jesus come out of that tomb, like I would believe, right? Well, Mary sees Jesus coming out of the tomb, but she doesn't believe it's him. It's not seeing that was believing, it was hearing that was believing. You see, we are shaped by the words we hear and the words that we believe. And what word does Jesus use to help Mary believe? He says her name. Here's a question I want to ask you this Easter morning. Do you think Jesus knows your name? You know, when someone knows your name, when they see you, they speak your name. It speaks of a relationship, of a knowing, right? That just, broadens our heart. My name is James Michael Donohue. You know, I go by my middle name, Mike. But whenever I was in elementary school, and we would have a substitute teacher come in, and they would call the roll, and I'd start to my face would start to get red every time when I was a little kid, and because I knew when they got to my name, instead of saying my name, Mike, they were going to say James Donohue, and inevitably, like, some cute little girl would start to giggle, and I'd feel embarrassed because, like, they used the word James to talk about me when my name was Mike. Now, James is, like, a totally fine name. I'm not trying to riff on any Jameses or Jims out there, but I was Mike, right? It just wasn't my name, and it was just always kind of everyone would be like, "Who's James?" And I would get all red and embarrassed. You know, someone not knowing your name, right? This makes you feel unknown, unseen, but when they know your name, Jesus knows your name, and he wants you to know that he knows your name. That's why he says Mary's name. And then Mary does something that we all need to consider, like she turns. I love that the passage says this. Jesus said to her, Mary, and she turned, right? She turned. See, she just kinda quickly looked maybe, thought this guy was a gardener, and she's crying, and she's upset, and Jesus says her name, Mary, and what does she do? She turns. Listen, this is like, I want you to think about this, like, all of human history changed with that turn, right? Before Mary turned, there was no hope of resurrection, no victory of sin, no victory over death, but when Mary turned, human history changed. That first witness to the resurrection, right? Jesus calls her and she has to respond. And in the same way, Jesus calls to you and you have to respond. See, for faith to be real, it has to be personal. It has to be yours. No one is born a Christian. Faith is not just intellectual, it's personal. It is you trusting your life with Jesus. Mary heard her name and she turned and she finally believed, not because of what she saw, but because of what she heard. In the same way, God is calling to you in this monumental thing called the resurrection. And he wants you to know that he is resurrected for you. Do you believe it? It's for you, it's personal. It has to be your faith. But secondly, it has to be a meaningful faith. That faith has to mean something to you. Arthur Brooks, in the book, his new book, The Meaning of Your Life, says that in modern life, we accomplish a lot and we enjoy a lot of things. And yet there seems to be a lot of disappointment, depression, anxiety that seems to accompany this accomplishment and enjoyment of life. And the reason he argues, and I tend to agree, is because in all of our accomplishments and in all of our enjoyments, we lack meaning. And without meaning, accomplishment and enjoyment just doesn't bring what we want out of life. We desperately crave meaning in our lives. It's not enough to just know things and do things. It has to mean things to you. So again, here's my second question this morning. Does the fact that Jesus Christ has risen from the grave and is ascended into heaven mean anything to you? See, here's what has to happen for the resurrection to mean something to you, just like it had to happen for Mary. In order for the resurrection to matter to Mary, she had to expand her thinking. And I love how Jesus personally works to expand Mary's thinking. And we're going to look at this because at first blush, right, this encounter that Jesus has with Mary, it's kind of weird. When you really read it closely, it's kind of weird. Let's go back and look at it. So she turns and she says to him in Hebrew, Rabbouni, which means teacher. Jesus said to her, "Do not touch me, because I have not yet ascended to the Father. But go to my brothers and say to them, I am ascending to my Father and your Father, to my God and your God." Mary Magdalene went and announced to the disciples, "I have seen the Lord." And she told them that he had said these things to her. Kind of a weird, kind of a weird exchange, right? Here's Mary, the first witness of the resurrection. I don't know what first words like would have come out of your mouth if you witnessed someone be a resurrected person that you loved, but I don't know that it would have been their professional title. And that's what Mary responds with, Rabbi, teacher. Now it's an honorable title, and it was something that was deeply personal and meaningful to Mary, right? About who Jesus was in her life. So I'm not knocking that, but it's interesting. And then the second thing I want you to notice and just think about for a second, it seems like she grabs a hold of him because Jesus is like, back off, don't let go don't grab onto me, don't hold on to me. Now, it's kind of, if you really stop and think about it, if you just witness like someone that has come out of the tomb, is your first move to go for a hug? I don't know that that would be my first move. I might wanna, like, poke the body, like, to see if it's real. I might wanna, like, examine to, like, make sure I knew what I was hugging. But, like, Mary cries out, "Teacher," and grabs a hold of Jesus, and Jesus, instead of, like, well, it's kinda you'd expect Jesus to give her a big hug back, but he doesn't. Here's what I think is happening. Now, this is debatable, but here's what I think is happening. Mary is using an old word for Jesus, and she's hugging him and grabbing a hold of him. And basically, what she is saying is, I think what she's thinking is, you didn't die. Like somehow you cheated all this. Somehow you beat this death. Like you got away with it, and now you're back to who you were for me, which was a teacher and someone I loved and could hold on to. And Jesus says, no, like I need to expand your thinking now, Mary. I'm not just who I was. I'm not just your old teacher that, and this relationship of love. I am now much bigger than you could ever imagine. I am going to ascend to heaven. Now that word ascend is a powerful word. Like one, it means to go up. It's spatial. So in some ways, Jesus is saying, like, I am leaving this kingdom. I am going somewhere else. But secondly, it's a royal term. So Jesus is now saying, I am king. I am king of the whole. I'm in charge of all of this stuff. Like I have been elevated by God, right? To ascend. I've been lifted up by God the Father, by my God, by your God. I've been lifted up to this amazing place because of my victory now over death. That there is an ascension that Jesus, the resurrection, the ascension are tied together in John's mind, about who Jesus was. And he's trying to expand Mary's thinking so that the resurrection of Jesus means so much more than, oh, I just got my friend back, right? This had to become a place of meaning for Mary, right? Now, like, I want you to think about this for a second. Like, does the fact that Jesus Christ, I say to you this morning, Jesus Christ has risen from the grave, does it, like I asked earlier, like, does it mean anything to you? Perhaps it doesn't mean that much because it doesn't really make sense to you. It seems kind of like incoherent. Um, it doesn't touch all of your life. Maybe you're here with a sentimental faith, you come back to Easter on holidays and family moments, but it's pretty, this idea that Jesus resurrected is like pretty meaningless to you in the real world, right? In the world that you're going to go back to tomorrow or tonight after Easter dinner. Like this nice thought, but doesn't mean anything, right? Doesn't really mean anything because you have a sentimental faith. You're kind of keep God in this little box. Or maybe you have a foxhole faith. When things are going good, you really don't think much about it. And frankly, you'd think Jesus would kind of ruin the party, like if he came around and when things are going good. But when things are bad, like I'll reach out and I'll cry to God. But like my faith only means something based on like how my life is going. And so this idea that Jesus is resurrected from the dead and is ascended to heaven and all these kind of things doesn't really like connect with me, right? The life, death, and resurrection of Jesus makes sense of all of life. You see, through his teaching, life and teachings, we find truth, virtue, love, and mercy. Through his death, we have the answer to sin, death, and spiritual, personal, and social evil. Through his resurrection, we have the profound promise of everlasting life, the assurance of victory. We have a faith that brings hope. See, these are all the questions of life. Like, how do I live? Look at Jesus. Why are things wrong? Look at the cross. What hope can I find? Look at the resurrection. See, in this moment, like all of life's questions are given a coherence. They're given a holistic framework in which you can fit life into. And so when you say, I believe in the resurrection, like you're actually bringing coherence to your life, right? Now, I know this is deep stuff. I know that it's hard to connect all these dots. And here's what I want to hear. Mary didn't have that all figured out that first moment. She didn't. But she was open to it. She began to understand that like her faith had meaning. Her faith had meaning. And you don't have to have it all figured out either. The second thing I want you to see that Jesus did is he didn't just say, like, "Don't cling to me, like, this is much bigger than you understand," but he sends her, and he says, "Go and tell my brothers," right? Arthur Brooks, again, he said that when if we wanna find meaning, it equals coherence plus purpose plus significance. Um, Jesus didn't just give Mary reasons to believe in a grand narrative of a story, which is hugely important. He tells her to do something with it, right? He gives her purpose and significance. Like I want you to do something now with this experience, this encounter we've had. And she, and like it's interesting to think Mary came to the tomb with nowhere to go, broken, dejected, sad. She leaves with direction. Go and tell my brothers. Again, she's the first preacher of the resurrection. She's the first apostle, as it were. And she has this great message to bring. I have seen the Lord, right? Again, the biggest 5 words ever spoken in human history. Easter gives you somewhere to go with your life. If you believe in the resurrection and ascension of Jesus, even if you don't have it all figured out, I mean, even if you're 80% there, not 100% there, it brings like if you're a believer, like you have somewhere to go with your life. Not only has Jesus come to you, but now you go into the world and begin to tell people that Jesus has come, that you have seen and experienced the Lord. So what's that small Mary had to run to the brothers, but what's that small kernel of corner of your world? Is it your friends, family, work, neighborhood? Like, where can you be sent, right? Because you wanna live a li you want this to mean something to you. It has to explain all of life, but it also has to give you direction and purpose, and that's what Jesus does in this encounter with Mary. Let me close with this, right? Mary found something, and you can find something that Easter. See, the big reason I used to give up on Easter egg hunts is I never expected to find anything. But Easter, you're supposed to find something. Jesus wants you to find faith. Maybe for the first time, you're like Mary, like you're coming here this morning and you've got some kind of personal thing you're carrying. Maybe it's a struggle with work or relationships or maybe it's like unanswered questions. Maybe it's desire for a coherent story. Maybe it's suffering. I don't know what it is, but Jesus wants to say your name. Jesus says your name. He comes out of the tomb and he says your name. And all you have to do is turn to recognize I've been looking in the wrong spot. I was dismissing you just as a gardener, but now I see you're so much more Jesus. And for those of you that have already believed, like, are you living smaller than Easter calls you to? Right? Do you recognize that this is the story of all stories? This brings meaning out of all of life, and it gives your life a purpose that no matter what season of life you find yourself in, maybe you're a student in school, maybe you're a young family, maybe you're deep in your career, maybe you're retired, you're all these things. Your life, you are sent. Your life has purpose and meaning because Jesus is risen from the grave. The new creation is underway. God is asking you to find something this Easter. May you find it. Let me pray. Lord Jesus, thank you that you have risen from the grave. May that truth fit deep in our hearts, and may we see you and hear you with fresh eyes and fresh ears this Easter. In your name we pray. Amen. God bless you, Church One. Have a beautiful Easter.